Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of BizTalk OnxOn. We have a special guest for all of you this evening. He's a property investor, so do stick around. And here's another intro for you guys to headbang to. Let's go! A very good evening to all of you. How are you guys doing today? Welcome to the 17th episode of BizTalk OnxOn. We have a special guest for all of you viewers and our listeners on podcast as well. Alright, so without further ado, let me just go straight to introducing our co-host for tonight. He is none other than, of course, the gentle giant himself, Mr. Adi Ismail.
Hello,
Adi, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about our special guest for tonight?
Okay, today we have Moztafa. He's a property investor of more than 10 years, and basically he's someone who owns multiple properties. He's also serving as a property agent, and so I guess he has told me before that most of the properties that are out there, which are actually good for investments, usually it will be snapped up by the property agents. So I guess he is the one that is snapping it up. So there is still something for all of us to learn. I guess we need to actually also get to know more property agents in our network if we want to become a property investor, because they will be our hands and our ears on the ground, right, Razlin?
Right. That's right. All right. So I'm really excited. I can't wait for him to come in. All right. But before that, there are some announcement from our sponsors as well.
Yeah. So our sponsors for today's session is Flitzer Performance. You can actually go to their fan page, Flitzer Performance, and all the products that you can see on the fan page is on a discount of 5% for all our audience. So if you are looking to actually improve your ride, if you drive a car and you want to change your steering wheels, your tires, and even to improve your throttle response, acceleration, so Flitzer Performance basically provide these products. And yeah, do check out their fan page.
Right. So do check out Flitzer Performance. I think they have amazing offers and discounts as well. So you guys definitely need to check them out. All right. So before, there's another announcement that I'd like to make. This is from Mega Express International, another sponsor of us, right? Mega Express International Private Limited is an exhibition organizer of many wedding fairs and halal food exhibition for the past 22 years. Okay. So Mega Express International Private Limited will be organizing Singapore's first virtual wedding exhibition targeting the Malay Muslim community towards the end of this month, from the 28th to the 30th of August. Right, there will be many interesting activities and programs, including Zoom sessions between wedding vendors and wedding couples. All right, so these business matching sessions will encourage dealings and bookings to be made via online. So for those couples who's tying up their wedding knots really soon, what you guys want to do is that you want to visit www.megawedding.sg to choose your preferred wedding vendors, and Mega Express will link you together via those Zoom online sessions, right? So I hope you guys will stay tuned right to the end of this episode, because there is a special promotion by one of the participants of megawedding.sg, and that is Fast Perfume, which is a brand of a company known as Millennials Marketing Services Private Limited. So you guys want to stay tuned right up to the end of this episode for us to mention what's the special offer and discounts that you guys can look out for. Okay, all right. So Adi, without further ado, let us introduce our guest speaker, which is in the hot seat right now, right?
Yep.
Is that okay with you?
Of course. Bring him in.
All right, so let us give some love and put our hands and give him a round of applause. Mr. Moztafa Kamal.
Hello.
Right.
Thanks for
Hi,
having me
hey,
here.
hey. Hey, Mos, how are you?
Boss.
I'm good. Thanks for having me here. I trust that this is going to be a very good way to end the week on a Sunday night.
Right. I think for us and Adi is the start of the week, I guess.
That's a good way to start as well.
So, Mos, I'm sure most of community have already known you, but there are some who doesn't.
Yep.
So perhaps you want to start it off by introducing yourself. Like, tell us a little bit about you.
Right. Okay. So I think it's a bit big to start as to introduce myself as a property investor. I think humbly first, I've got a family of three. I've got three kids. I'm in a family of property agents. Okay, so my wife is a housing agent. My mom is a property agent. So I've been following around my mom since I was 8 years old. Since I was 8. So.
Right.
So yeah, so it started off as a hobby. I took an interest in observing the property trends, but what started off as a hobby turned into a means to actually provide for my family. But beyond that, I think I've got something to offer for the audience tonight. Yeah,
Sounds good.
sounds good. Sounds good. It's not too late, no, for them. Are they ready for me? Is it too late?
No,
I think
their Monday starts much earlier. Don't worry. So it should be fine.
I hope they're ready for us. Okay.
I was wondering, Mos, I mean, at 8 years old, what were you doing and tagging along? I mean, at that age, what was the impression, that you had when you actually went to visit, homes and then saw your mom marketing those homes? Can you share with us those experiences when you were younger?
To be honest, I think my role at that time was really to hold the compass. I mean, if I was going to be very honest, it's really to hold my mom's files. So that was my role when I was a P2 kid. But I observed a lot of subtle behaviors in people, why people sold their houses, and people up to today also, people sell their houses for a variety of reasons. So the idea here is to actually study why people sell their house, whether whether the market's going to force you to sell, whether you force yourself onto the market and you force your price onto the market. So they always say that it's about when you enter and how you enter and when you exit. It's all it seems like it's a very sweeping statement. It seems very nice to hear, but in practice, actually, there's a lot more that goes on into it. So it's not just nice words. It's a lot of homework. It's a lot of being self-reliant, not just relying on one particular person. There are good salespeople out there. Okay? There are good sales makers out there, but the objective, when I always try to educate those people around me, I always tell people that they need to first be self-reliant. You need to know what you're doing. You can't expect everybody to advise you in a certain way. And you need to qualify your advice. So you need to be more discerning in your approach. You can't just take any advice and then just do what people tell you to do, no matter how famous or no matter how influential people are. You'll have to take ownership of one of the biggest purchases in your life, which is your real estate.
True. Most, our viewers and listeners basically understand the term investment because that's exactly what we're going to talk tonight, right? Right. So can you explain further what does it really mean by property investment?
Okay. So the what and the how to property investment is easy, but the why is seldom approached. People say that it's an investment, so you have to surely be making money, to be making profit. But money is a byproduct of the investment. It's not a strong why. To unlock this concept, you need to first anchor yourself to know what is the big whys that drives us to buy a house, and to buy again, and sell again, and buy again. You need to understand what is the big whys. So Singaporeans are obsessed with this, for sure. You know that already. But essentially, Singaporeans are driven by property investments because of four main reasons. Okay, so if I may just touch on those four reasons a little bit. So the first reason that most people are driven by is the district. You might not be aware of this, but people are driven by the district. They are conscious of the districts they are in, what it means to their family, be it for schools or be it for the social hierarchy they're trying to climb into. But this is, or being close to parents. Okay, so some people buy properties as an investment for the district. That's number one. The second one, which I see a trend I've been observing for most of my life, is that people are, take this in good spirit, it's not a negative thing, but people are obsessed with landed property. So the first one is they're driven by district. Second is the obsession towards a landed property. And it's inherent relationship because it's in limited supply. So people want to have something which other people cannot have, or less people can have of. So that's an obsession. The second one is landed property. The third one is people are motivated by multiple property ownership. They might feel that having more is always better. So that's one. And part of our audience here could also be motivated by the fourth factor. And that fourth factor is to actually be encouraged by the fastest path towards a fully paid asset. So they are driven by wanting to fully pay whatever the property is. It doesn't have to be HDB, condo, landed property. They're motivated by that. So they feel that it's a vehicle for them to reach that faster, to fully pay for their house. So it's one of those things. So to start with what investment means, you got to ask yourself, what does it mean to you? Are you driven by the district? Are you obsessed with owning a landed property? It's debatable whether it's good or bad, but if you want to get there, then my job is to help you get there, whatever your aspirations are. The third one is multiple property ownership. It's not what it seems. I think you got to ask ourselves the question: multiple properties, does it equal to multiple problems? Sometimes it does. So once you understand and you've peeled these layers, I think then you can answer all the questions about what and how do we buy those assets. Those are easy answers. The ones which are difficult, the fuzzy ones, is actually the why. Why are we doing this? So I think that's a good conversation to have.
So are there people that actually want to achieve more than one of those objectives? You have 4 of them. So someone might say, I want to, have multiple properties, but at the same time, I want to fully pay it or something like that. Do you meet such people, or is that? Yeah.
In a perfect world, you will want to have all 4, meaning you want to have fully paid, multiple landed properties in good districts. That is in a perfect world. And a lot of the messaging now that we have in social media is trying to take advantage of those desires. So there are people coming in and telling you how to buy 43 properties with zero to little money down. So you need to have your senses on guard, on high alert, to know that those messaging is taking advantage of your desires, and it's highly probable that you can put yourself in a mess, because I mean, it sounds good, man, but I'm not here to put their messaging down, but those are very risky things.
43 properties. What if all 43 properties combined together give you a negative income? I mean, you got to top up every month. I think that's going to be a big problem, right, Moz?
Well, the first thing I always ask people is to qualify their advisory. So if someone says not just to buy 43 with zero down, that's an extreme version. Obviously, there are people who tell you that, look, sell 1, buy 2. This is the narrative. Whatever you want to call it, like call it upgrading and call it asset progression. You can package it in different ways. But it is, in its essence, if someone asks you to do something, the first thing you're going to do is you've got to qualify them. Have you done so? Show me. Does it work for everybody? It doesn't. So sell 1, buy 2 sounds good, because it's nice to have 2 of everything, 2 cars, 2 phones, 2 everything. But you need to consider your trajectory, your current position, what needs to happen in your life for you to be able to sustain it. So you need a lot of foresight. You're not here for the short haul, right? Just to stay in a condominium for 3, 4, 5 years, and then after that, what happens? I see a lot of that happening, but I also see a lot of positive things as well. So you must have this long-term vision that we're in here for the long haul, to sustain this lifestyle, and so that your inheritors, your children, can have that head start. It's not to take 3 steps back. It's to take all of us forward, you see. So I'm in here for the long haul, and whoever is in here for the long haul as well. I think we're in the company of like-minded people.
Yeah. Okay, so there is a question from one of our viewers right now. Okay, his name is Muhammad Nazrin. Nazrin, how are you, bro? Okay, so thank you very much for your question. He was asking, how can a middle-income Singaporean owns multiple properties? Thank you, Nas, for this question. And thank you for supporting us. Mus.
Hi, Nazrin. Right. So I like to paraphrase that and pose the question back. Do you really need to own multiple properties? So what is that qualifying sentence or what qualifies that? Why does a middle-income Singaporean need to own multiple properties? Do you associate multiple properties with a sense of wealth, social status? Is that what it is? But if that's what it is, then it's I would say that someone who's earning, I'm not trying to disqualify someone who's earning middle income bracket to disqualify them from owning multiple properties. But first you need to ask if it's really for you, because the opposite of this is to consolidate funds, to consolidate your assets with your spouse and own a fantastic property that works hardest for you, that you can pass on to your children. So the narrative doesn't have to be about multiple properties. It could be one consolidated property that is good, that performs better than having just loosely defined properties. Because a lot of folks can say that I have a commercial, I've got a cut-up industrial, I've got a share in this, a share in that. I've this loosely classified properties. So
it is, I guess, Moz, it is also important to understand why you want to have those multiple properties, right?
It's
then
the
next stage will be what kind of strategy to take, right? The tactics and all that.
The strategies and the thing, obviously, it's personalized. We'll have, without knowing the backstory of the investor, you can't make a very conclusive one-size-fits-all statement. That will be a sweeping statement. That will be it's nice when it sounds like a sales gimmick. You can say something where everybody can do. But to answer this question, I would just tell him plainly. I hope I'm not answering the question. But a middle-income Singaporean, if he doesn't have to own multiple properties, he shouldn't. He shouldn't be made to be put in a position to own multiple properties if he can't afford it.
Okay. Then Moz, then it goes up to the next question of, you mentioned about consolidating, right? That means instead of having 2-3 properties, you just consolidate your income, your funds, and go into one property that is, that is able to actually perform better. Can you give an example of that?
Okay. So typically when I see someone having only one child, so a family having only one child, usually they would have this. They're more inclined to consolidate their funds and move into a better district. So they can move through the bands. They can move from a condominium to a landed property, or from a condominium in a less known district to a more well-known district. They consolidate their funds. But if you have 2 or 3 children, for example, then that could be a good case. That could be a good argument to say, okay, I want to have 2 or 3 properties. I want to work towards 2 or 3 properties, because each of those properties can be inherited by my 3 kids. So you've got 3 properties, 3 kids. This is something you can strive toward and give them a head start. Because 20 years from now, the landscape is going to be very different. $1 million is not going to be $1 million. Every HDB is going to be 7 digits.
Yeah, it's already happened, right? HDBs in Bishan are going for $1 million.
Yeah. So it's really about whether we can dig down and see whether whether we're doing it for ourselves or we're doing it for our children. I don't want to be too lofty and say that I'm doing it for my kids, because it sounds like it, but I have 3 kids, so I need to think, or constantly think about ways and ask myself whether my property is performing good for me, performing well for me, and is my dollar going the distance further, as opposed to putting my $1 in something else. Is this dollar going further for me, working harder for me? So these are the things that are going into my head, and these are the things which I talk about with my clients, because it's about finding value. It's not just about finding the cheapest property. It's a very dangerous road to be qualifying properties based on the cheapest, because the cheapest property has got inherent flaws that will stick through generations. So it's not about finding the cheapest, it's about finding the value of those properties. So, and value is made up of benefit and cost, okay? So I can talk way past midnight, okay? So you guys got your questions. I got a lot of miles in me. I do this every day.
And All right. So anyway, Nazrin mentioned power lah, Tuan Mos, really opens up my perspective, right? Right. So hopefully that answers your question, Nas. And thank you very much, Nas, for participating. We encourage more questions to come from you. Okay. So here we are, guys, talking about buying multiple properties and stuff like that. Actually the real situation right now, what we are facing is not that rosy after all, isn't it? Right? Because all of us are currently, experiencing this pandemic right now. So, and I still believe that there are some out there who have not yet feel the real pinch, Well, I still believe that there are those who's definitely feeling it right now. So we have to agree. Yeah, we have to agree that we are indeed in a recession, right? So what do you say about that, Mos?
Right, for sure. So for sure we are in a recession. It doesn't really feel like it in the property market because you're seeing some movements, you're seeing some activity. People are still buying and selling every day. You don't really see the prices sliding so much. But I got to attribute this to the fact that whoever is getting laid off, who can't afford to pay for their mortgages, they don't have to pay for their mortgage because MAS ruling has actually allowed for mortgage deferments, or at least until January next year. So what that means is that you're not feeling the full brunt of the recession yet. You don't feel it because you don't see those fire sales. People are not really panicking because if they had lost their jobs and if they can't pay it, they just have to defer it. And the banks have to allow that deferment, you see. So you're not really feeling the full force. So we'll have a clearer picture by January, actually.
Okay, I didn't know that actually MAS can, extend and, they have that deferment in place all right up until next year in January. I didn't know that actually.
It appears to me that you can pay your mortgage very easily, so you don't have to defer. But a lot of, I'm just in light-hearted spirit. I think it's good. If people don't know that, I think they should go to their bank's website. And it's a quick process. Just click apply and they can't even ask you anything. You just have to give you the deferment. That's out of good grace. And, the government is conscious about its responsibility to the people. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing that they allow for that.
Yeah. I believe it's a good information, isn't it, for our viewers and our listeners right now, isn't it, Adi?
Yeah, definitely. Because I'm actually following this particular move by the government trying to help the citizens that are being laid off and all. And initially I was asking the question of whether we would be penalized if we actually take this up. But apparently, you won't. I thought that your credit ratings would go down, something like that. But I guess, Mos, you could shed some light on this.
Well, there are implications for sure, because what happens is that your tenure is still fixed, right? You defer it, and then your quantum, the amount that you borrow is unchanged. So by next year, you have to pay the same amount, but at a shorter tenure, right? So there might be a bit of an increase in the mortgage repayment. But what happens is that you don't feel so suffocating. If you can't pay a 3,000 mortgage, you don't feel like you are cornered. This actually gives you a lead time to figure out solutions. And selling is a sales maker's immediate knee-jerk solution to you. In a problem, sell your house. In a problem, sell your house. But you got to ask yourself this question: is selling your property the only solution? To me, that's where it comes in again. You've got to qualify the advisory that's coming in.
Yeah, actually it fits Nazrin's next question, because he was asking with regards to the current pandemic situation, is it a good advice for us to sell or to put on hold our intention of upgrading or in fact downgrading?
The question is just coming from Nazrin, it seems. But I'll take the question. Now, look, when there's a crisis like this, there's an opportunity, but are you in a position to take the opportunity? So I see three kinds. Before I answer your question, I see three kinds of categories of people who are buying at the moment. Number one, people who happen to be buying right now. So they may not have waited for this. Nobody could have waited for this. So they were just fickle for the past 2-3 years, seen 50, 60 properties, haven't bought anything. They happen to be in today's climate, so they can get a good deal, for example. First category. The second category, the people who have access to cash reserves. You can't feel it, but I can feel it. So any property agent who has got 2-3 landed listings, it doesn't feel like a recession. People are calling us every hour. So the landed property scene, very robust. Suddenly there's $2-3 million, don't know coming from where. It doesn't feel like a pandemic. So the sharks are out there gobbling up all these landed properties. And the next category are people who are willing to accept their reality and willing to accept the trade-off that I can't sell at a fantastic price, but I can buy at a fantastic price. Because either way, if the prices are fantastic, pre-COVID-19, let's say, if it's very high, the price, you also be buying high. So you sell high, you buy high. So people who can accept that reality, and if Nazrin can accept it, that if you are selling your property, you can't get a perfect price, but you can see an opportunity. Now, if you feel that opportunity is of value to you, the trade-off is okay, you don't have anxiety, you're not overstretching yourself, go for it. A lot of good deals in the market for sure. Yeah.
So is it advisable if, let's say, someone has cash in hands and let's say he lives in a 5-room flat, right? And he knows that if he sells right now, he might lose a bit, right? If compared to some, the sale was done maybe 2 years ago or something like that. But is it good to actually sell if you are looking to upgrade? That means you sell your house now, and then you go on to let's say buy a bigger property, or in a better district, for example. Let's say someone selling a 5-room flat in Tampines and maybe looking to buy, a condo somewhere in, maybe East Coast area. Yeah.
So the locations aside, because there's too many things in play here, let's just look at the opportunity. So if let's say the person can't get a fantastic price at the moment, but the gap that he needs to jump to cross from the HDB onto the another band, which is a condominium, for example, of his dreams or of his choice. Yep. And if that gap, you can't look at it in the absolute terms. You can't look at last time I can get 100,000 more, now I get 100,000 less. But if the jump is easier now because the private property option is more affordable, for example, or there's more anxious sellers who are willing to give you a good deal, and it represents good value. So I would encourage the person if he can make that, is willing to accept that trade-off. But some people are not. Some people are hardwired to not speculate, but just be spectators. And there's nothing wrong with that. So some people are okay being spectators, because you got to ask yourself this question. In 1996, in 2001, in 2008, did you buy? If you had bought, just buying at those periods, you would have made millions of dollars already. So not everybody bought it, right? So some people didn't took advantage of those price drops.
Okay, and so apparently, I think you answered Nazrin's question perfectly.
A lot of heart there, man.
Okay, so I'm really attracted, I'm really attracted by the part by where you mentioned about people are losing jobs and stuff like that. Can I just elaborate further on that? Right, so yeah, true. People are indeed losing jobs, right? So many simply are just relying on, their savings to tide up them through. So maybe, those savings that they have can last them for maybe say about few more months, right? But eventually the savings are going to get depleted, right? Because the income is not getting in, right? So what do you suggest they do with their property, right? In order to generate income right now?
Okay. So the knee-jerk response is to sell your house. So I'm here to tell you, whoa, hold on. Okay. If you talk to sales makers, they ask you to sell, right? If you talk to speculators, they ask you to speculate. Everybody has an expert opinion. Let's respect everybody's opinion. But I want people to dig down into the definition of the property. Is your property a measure of your wealth, and is it a byproduct of your perceived success? To put it simply, do you make money to buy your property, or do you buy your property to make money? Because I understand the majority of people see real estate or property as a shelter, a roof over your head. When you start talking about making money, people get a bit uncomfortable. They're like, whoa. It's a roof and a shelter, right? But if you can change that perception or be open-minded about it, then you can start to seize the opportunity or see it in terms of the property making money for you, the property getting you out of tight spots, the property saving you when there are difficult moments in time, like today. So that's when you can be open-minded to actually see all the spaces in the property, every inch you can monetize, and you can, you can see the solution instead of just caving in and, people ask you to sell and you sell. It doesn't really solve some problems. Actually, a lot of times people shouldn't be selling their house, but they still do it. I know some of my colleagues are going to be a bit upset with that statement. I'm not telling people not to sell. If you can sell and make a profit, please do it now. We'll go to your house and sign the OTP now. If you can make a profit, but don't let anyone, me included, tell you to sell your house at a loss when you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be doing it. There are options for sure. There are options.
Right. Okay, so there's another question by another viewers of ours, right? His name is Shafi Ibrahim. He was asking, is it better to buy a resale condo or a new launch project?
Right. So is he going to join real estate? If he's going to join real estate, I'll tell him to advise people to buy new launch, because the commission on new launch is fantastic, unprecedented, 5-6% commission. It's subjective. There are people who, you can make the argument that new launch projects, there's a systematic way to make money, because everybody starts on common ground. Everybody starts at the same PSF level. So historically, you can see how people make money, because after 3 years, after your SSD, you get to exit, and nobody has an unfair advantage over you. So you can make that profit if you bought at the right time. Resale condos, you need to have a better eye for it. You need to understand what you're getting yourself into. There are lots of golden projects, a lot of very old properties, and that's my specialty. I go into very old projects and I refurbish them, and I keep and then I sell it after I refurbish it. But it's not for everybody, obviously. But the problem with the resale condo is that you start on different entry points. So you can't say you bought it cheap. Cheap is relative. It may be cheap to you, but it may not be cheap to somebody else. It may be cheaper now, but compared to 6-7 years ago, it's not cheap. So if you entered at 800 PSF, you're like very happy, whoa, I got it at 800 PSF, but somebody got it at 600 PSF, maybe 15 years ago or 12 years ago. So now that person has got an unfair advantage over you consistently. So if you exit in 5 years, he still bought it 200 PSF cheaper. On the language on the ground is that he can spoil market for you. And whatever you want to sell, he can sell it cheaper than you, because he bought it way cheaper. So this is a problem or a challenge with resale. I won't say it's a problem, it's a challenge in a resale condo market. If you have the miles to sieve through and to pick out the good buys, you can actually find good buys. But a lot of people don't want a hassle. They want it brand new. So new launch actually solves that problem as well.
What about you, Adi? I'm just curious. What about you? Do you prefer to buy a resale condo or a new launch project, Adi?
Okay, basically, I've learned a thing or two from Moz, actually, even before this show. I've actually sat down with him and listened to his strategies, his ideas, and I'm being open-minded, actually. So I think that there is actually a lot of good if you actually buy a resale condo, right, which is near the MRT, for example. Okay, and if you are an investor, if you are an investor and you have an investor mindset, resale condos can actually fetch very good rental rates, especially if it's located in a good place and if it's freehold, right? So, but I wouldn't want to say much because the person that taught me all this is here. So it's actually good to let him tell us, what an investor who is open to actually buying a resale condo can actually get from such an investment.
Yeah, before we go to that, I totally agree. When it comes to buying a resale condo, maybe I can just input just a little bit pertaining to the difference. Because I bought my private condo newly launched, right? But when you buy a newly launched property, basically you see it from, the thing's not up yet, right? So you see it from a diagram, you see it from the layout and stuff like that. But actually it doesn't appear to, I don't know, I mean, once it's ready, 4 years later or maybe 5 years later, once it's up, it turns out to be something different from what you see on the diagram, right? So it's always better to go and buy a resale condo, I feel, because you'll be able to see exactly how it looks like and what are the view like. These are important things that you need to really, really consider before buying. Yeah, that's what I feel. Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question, Shafi Ibrahim. Thank you very much. Do ask more questions. Yeah, do ask more questions. We love our viewers to participate in our discussion as well. All right. So there is another question by one of our viewers as well. Okay, her name is Azida Kamis. She gave salam to all. Okay, between buying REITs or REITs, right, and the actual property, what is the difference and which is better? Second question is, when is the right time for corporates to go into property investment as part of wealth management? Very good question, in fact.
Okay.
Most, please.
Right. Now, I'm going to have a very biased viewpoint, and I'm by no means a perfect source of information because I have my own biasness and prejudices based on my experience. I don't really encourage people to buy REITs. I can understand why people buy it. It's a more hands-off approach, and you split your risks with so many other people. You've got a better, more organized way of managing the property, just collecting your returns on investment. But I see real estate as also a solution in a worst case scenario. In a worst case scenario, if everything could fail on me, that piece of property I can touch, I can feel, and I can find solutions with it. And I can stay in it if worst comes to worst, right? So that's how I started. I started off buying a property which I thought was amazing. That was about 12 years ago. So it was a walk-up. It's a 2.5 stories condominium, but I thought it was amazing. It was like, wow, mansionette kind of concept in a condo. So, and I couldn't rent it out. That was the real problem. If I could be vulnerable and open and tell everybody the true story here. So I couldn't rent it. I mean, it was, we thought we could rent it at 3.5 and it went down to 3.30. You know how people are. They negotiated, and 2.8 also, we couldn't rent it out. So what happened was that we started to look beyond that and try to identify parts of the house that we can monetize. And it solved my problem. And from solving the problem, it allowed me to create wealth. So that property is at 1.24 million. It's getting about a $7,000, slightly under 7,000 income stream every month. And in worst case scenario, I can live in it, right? But what I'm trying to say is that you have control over it. You have no one else to blame but you. So you have control over your investment, even if you had bought the wrong property. There may be people in the audience here like, look, I already bought a wrong house. I cannot sell, I lose my money and stuff. But you can find the solution from within. You don't have to sell the house if you don't want to. That's the thing. You have control. REITs, it's more passive, I guess. For someone who doesn't really want to get involved in you're busy with your work, or you're doing well in your work and you want to spend your bandwidth at work, that's fine. We totally understand that. And you can pass on the responsibility and buy a REIT. But for someone who likes to have this control, and I'm hands-on and I like to solve the problems myself, so an actual property investment is something which can't fight. Yeah. The second part of the question, I don't really feel that there's any other answer to it. If she knows if it's a company buying a property today, they have to pay a 20% ABSD. So that kind of structure to purchase is, you're getting a 20% setback already to make your margins. So I wouldn't think that it's there are other options, obviously. If you have the cash to fully pay up an asset and avoid the ABSD, but for companies to go into properties right now, you'll have to be coming in with a truckload of cash, and we will have the solution for you, but it's cash intensive.
Right. Okay. So hopefully that answers your question, Madam Azida Kamis. Okay, Nazrin has another interesting question also. All right, because he was asking if, when you say better eye, I think you did mention that. What is better eye, he was asking, and what are the things to look out for? What are the qualifiers and such? And for a normal and average person like him, he don't have deep understanding. So how do we know an advice is a good advice coming from property consultants?
Okay, so we trust that people who are advising us on our interests, but people are people. Sometimes people act on their own interest as well. So I guess a more qualified eye or a more qualified person to advise would be someone who has done it before. So that's always, that's always an important thing. So, but if you were to look at, let's scope it a little bit smaller. We're looking at it in terms of buying a new launch. Someone who's never done it before, an average person who's going into a show flat. And you're buying off plan, right? It looks on what it looks and what you actually move into is a bit different. So you need someone who has got a systematic way, who's got a system in place to actually sieve out things like livability score. So we have this livability score thing, which we actually project it and try to talk to people about, are you ready for the size of this kind of living room, this kind of bedroom, and tell them about the facing and the inherent objectives, the inherent objections of certain properties, which they may not know. They may not know certain stacks are inherently flawed. There will always be a stack which is that the developer built last, I guess. They have to prioritize some stacks which are easy to sell and some stacks, especially facing the generators, facing the expressways. These are, oh my gosh, if anybody asks you if this is a good buy, you should actually see how people are stuck just because it's facing an expressway, because it's facing a generator. And it cuts across all races. Malay don't like, Indian don't like, Chinese also don't like. So, so you need to have certain systems in place, like understanding which things which will inherently positively follow with you, like the direction and stuff like that. So it's like you're buying for your future buyer. I know it sounds a bit weird. You're buying for yourself, but you're also buying for your future buyer. You may not have prejudices. You may not believe in feng shui. You might not believe in numerology, in geomancy. I understand you don't believe in it. But what if a big size of the population believe in it? What if people are conscious about it? What if it affect your prices? You know what I mean? So you're not believing in it because of believing in it. You're believing it because you're interested in having a good exit strategy. So it's not always about buying cheapest and buying the most affordable. Because if that's what you're thinking, it's a very slippery slope. Yeah.
Okay. You just gave an hashtag Wakanabe.
Oh man.
Okay, Shami Wahid is tuning in as well. Thank you, bro. Thank you very much for tuning in. And he was asking facing West Sun.
This is interesting because a majority of Singaporeans have this averse reaction to west facing. Chinese, where most people feel like West Sun is like, oh my gosh, a vulgar word. They feel it's a vulgar word. But the Caucasians actually react differently to it. If you go to properties in Australia, in Sydney, in Dunedin, in Auckland, people just love when it's actually a draw. It's actually a west-facing thing. A trajectory of the sun or the movement of the sun is something which is very good. I personally like west-facing for two reasons. Number one, I can always get a good deal, because the person has got he's got no defense. The seller got nothing else to come back with. He knows people are not going to be so motivated to buy it. So I can always get a good deal of a west-facing unit. And my perception is that it's healthy for me. So that is a personal belief. I believe it's healthy for my family. When the sun comes in, I feel that I think there's some science behind it. Your food don't go stale, don't go bad so much. And it's I like the sun going in. Huh?
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, there is a science behind it. So houses which are purely
okay.
What we call it, the sun doesn't go into your house at all. It's got this, they got a moisture issue where it's a bit stale. But again, look, at the end of the day, if consumer behavior drives that fact that north-south is what you want, so then go for it, right? Because the majority of people believe that. But I feel that there is some hidden some good deals when you look at west-facing properties. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Adi, you have any questions before we go for a break?
Yeah, one last question. Sometimes, when you actually come across a property that's on the fourth floor, it seems cheaper than other properties on other floors, right? I think it's because of the Chinese would, it's 一二三四. That means you die die. Is it true, Moz, or is it something that is passé? That means that nobody cares about this anymore.
Before I got married, sorry. All my life I've been staying on the fourth floor. So far still alive and kicking. So it really depends on it. Interpretation, individual interpretation. If you're so, superstitious on those things and all that, it might affect you, right? But if you're not, then why would you, right? I'm sure most of you would agree with me on that.
I mean, Fazlin, this I just share with you guys, right? When I wanted to buy my condo, right? So I'm now staying on the fifth floor, but the property on the fourth floor is like $50,000 to about $70,000 cheaper.
Higher, right? Oh, cheaper.
Cheaper.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
The fourth floor one is cheaper, so that's the reason why. I think
I
this
see.
is something that's you got to consider. Before you buy or before you go into a fourth level property. I don't know, Moss. What do you think of this?
So my wife is Chinese, by the way, so she has not had any. She looks at something beyond the numbers. So number 4 doesn't really get a negative response out of her. But I do believe that a lot of people are very averse to staying on the fourth floor. But here's some food for thought. The majority of the investors are holding on to fourth floor units. So that's food for thought for you, right? So they can say all they want to say. It's an espoused belief system, something which they say fourth is bad, but what they do is different. They can get $100,000 deal. They quietly go and get the fourth floor unit and say, if I've got to die, then I'll die with 100,000 in my hand, right? So but people are going to rent it out, and they're going to see it as an investment. They're not too sentimental about it. They would feel that, look, this is a trade-off I'm willing to get, because if I can reduce my quantum, my mortgages are lower with respect to a fifth floor unit, for example. And then tenants don't really care, right? If it's fourth floor or 13th floor, tenants, they have other concerns and other motivations. So yeah, for an investor, truly, someone who's holding the property for long term, obviously you have got that resale exit strategy to consider. If you can get it 100,000 cheaper and have that 50,000 buffer with your competitors, whoever is selling in the market, you still can get ahead of them. You can still exit, so still make money. But so it's not really, it's made out to be a big objection, but it's not that bad. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So, okay, Mus, you did mention about rental of property, right? So do you suggest homeowners to rent the entire unit or just specific rooms? But I don't want you to answer just that, all right? So because right now we are going for a break. We're going for a really short break, and we'll come back to that then. Will that be okay with you?
Right, I need to go to the bathroom as well.
Okay, you better go fast because it's going to only be 1 minute break.
1 minute. Okay, 1 minute. I'll try to do it.
Okay, so right, so let's go for that break then. Our viewers right now, all right, stay tuned after these short messages.